My husband thought he'd buried his secrets forever, but the anniversary gift he gave me became the shovel that unearthed his entire hidden life. The lie I was living was beautiful. It was meticulously crafted, painted in warm tones of domestic bliss, and smelling faintly of the expensive cologne my husband, Mark, always wore. For 10 years, I'd woken up in that lie, wrapped in strong arms, convinced I was the luckiest woman alive. Mark wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend, my partner in crime, the man who could make me laugh so hard I'd cry even on my worst days. Our life was the one our friends envied. The perfect house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the garage, a golden retriever who was more spoiled than most children. We were the couple that still held hands in the grocery store. Our 10th anniversary was the peak of this perfect illusion. Mark surprised me with a weekend trip to a coastal town, the kind with quaint little bed and breakfasts and misty ocean views. He'd booked the same place where he'd proposed all those years ago. That night, over a candlelit dinner, he gave me a sleek, silver tablet, the newest model. "For you, my love," he'd said, his blue eyes sparkling with what I thought was unadulterated adoration. "So you can finally stop stealing my laptop for your ridiculous online shopping." I laughed, kissed him, and felt that familiar, comforting warmth spread through my chest, the warmth of being completely and utterly cherished. The first crack in the masterpiece appeared about a month later. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable. Mark, who had always been a bit of an open book with his technology, suddenly became intensely private. His phone, which used to lie face up on the kitchen counter, was now either in his pocket or face down. He started taking it into the bathroom when he showered. When I asked him about the new, complex passcode, he just shrugged and said it was a new company policy for security. You know how it is, babe. Sensitive client data. I accepted it, of course. Why wouldn't I? He was Mark. He was my rock. To doubt him would be to doubt the very foundation of my world. But the small things started to pile up. Late nights at the office became more frequent, business trips that popped up with less than a day's notice. He was more tired, more distant. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd pull me into a hug, kiss my forehead, and blame it all on a high-stress project. "It'll be over soon, I promise," he'd murmur into my hair. "Then it's back to just us." And I, the trusting, loving wife, would nod and believe him, pushing down the tiny, ugly worm of suspicion that had started to wriggle in the pit of my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid, that 10 years of marriage deserved more faith than this. The tipping point came on a lazy Sunday afternoon. I was finally setting up the new tablet he'd given me. I wanted to sync all my photos and apps, and the easiest way was to log into our shared family cloud account. We'd had it for years, a central digital hub for our shared memories, documents, and backups. As I logged in, I saw the usual list of devices: my phone, my old laptop, Mark's current phone. But then I saw something else. A line item I didn't recognize at first. It was labeled Mark's iPhone 8 backup. That was odd. Mark hadn't used an iPhone 8 in at least 4 years. I distinctly remember him selling it online after he upgraded. He'd made a big show of factory resetting it, wiping it clean for the new owner. So why would a backup still be sitting here, dormant in our cloud? A cold curiosity, sharper and more insistent than my previous suspicions, took hold of me. I told myself it was probably nothing, an old, forgotten file, an automatic backup he never bothered to delete. But the worm in my gut was squirming frantically now. My hands were shaking slightly as I tapped on the screen of my new tablet. An option popped up. Restore from this backup? My heart was hammering against my ribs. This felt like a violation, a betrayal of the trust I was so desperate to maintain. But I couldn't stop myself. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. I had to see. I hit restore. The tablet screen went dark, then lit up with the familiar progress bar. The little white line crawled across the screen with agonizing slowness. Every minute that passed felt like an hour. I paced the living room, chewing on my thumbnail, my mind racing. What was I doing? I was about to dredge up a 4-year-old digital ghost based on a fleeting paranoid suspicion. I was being crazy. Mark would be so hurt if he knew. I almost canceled it. My finger hovered over the screen, ready to stop the process and pretend this never happened. But the progress bar was already at 99%. It was too late. The screen flickered, and then a home screen I hadn't seen in years blinked into existence. It was his old phone's layout, a digital time capsule from 4 years ago. My eyes scanned the familiar app icons, searching for I didn't even know what. And then I saw it. Tucked away in a folder labeled Utilities, almost completely hidden, was an app I didn't recognize. It had a simple gray icon like a vault. My breath caught in my throat. I tapped it. It asked for a passcode. I tried his birthday. Nothing. I tried our anniversary. Nothing. On a whim, my fingers typed in a different date. A date he once mentioned was his old college dog's birthday. The vault clicked open. It revealed a list of files. My eyes landed on the first one, and the entire world tilted on its axis. The file wasn't a random string of numbers. It had a name. It was a video file labeled Melissa First Weekend. Melissa First Weekend. The words swam before my eyes, the letters blurring into meaningless shapes. My living room, once a sanctuary of warmth and comfort, suddenly felt cold and alien. The air grew thin, and I had to consciously remember to breathe. In, out. Melissa. Who the hell was Melissa? The name was a blank slate, a stranger's name that had just been scrawled across the masterpiece of my marriage in permanent ugly ink. For a wild, fleeting moment, I tried to rationalize it. A work thing? A cousin I'd never met? A joke? But the title, First Weekend, felt intimate, personal. It spoke of a beginning, and the fact that it was locked away in a hidden vault screamed of secrets. My thumb hovered over the video thumbnail, a blurry image of 2 people smiling, their heads close together. One was unmistakably Mark. The other was a woman with long, dark hair. I could smash this tablet. I could delete the backup, perform a factory reset, and shove the device into the back of a closet. I could choose to forget, to go back to the beautiful lie. I could wait for Mark to come home, kiss him, and pretend that the foundation of my world hadn't just fractured beneath my feet. But I knew I couldn't. The not knowing would be a different kind of poison, a slow-acting one that would corrode me from the inside out. The worm of suspicion had become a ravenous serpent, and it needed to be fed. With a hand that felt disconnected from my body, I pressed play. The video flickered to life. The quality was decent, a little shaky, like it was self-recorded. Mark's face filled the screen, grinning wider than I'd seen in years. "Okay, Mel, you ready?" he said, his voice laced with a playful excitement I knew all too well. The camera panned around to reveal a woman, Melissa, laughing. She was stunning. Young, vibrant, with eyes that sparkled as she looked at him, at my husband. They were in a hotel room, a nice one, with a balcony overlooking a city skyline I didn't recognize. The date stamp in the corner read 4 years and 2 months ago, the same month he'd supposedly sold this phone, the same month we'd been trying for a baby. The video continued. They were drinking champagne, toasting to us. He leaned in and kissed her, a long, passionate kiss that made my stomach churn with bile. He kissed her the way he kissed me. He looked at her the way he looked at me. It was a complete devastating performance of the man I thought I had all to myself. I didn't stop the video. I watched the entire 3 minutes and 42 seconds of my life imploding. I watched them laugh. I watched them dance clumsily around the room. I watched him tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. When it ended, the screen went black, reflecting my own pale, horrified face. But the horror was only just beginning. Below, Melissa. First Weekend, there were more files. Melissa, Beach House. Melissa, Christmas Market. And then a new name. Chloe, NYC trip, followed by photos. Then Jessica, conference gala. It was a library of his betrayals, a meticulously cataloged history of his secret life. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a midlife crisis affair. This was a pattern. This was who he was. The business trips, the late nights, the sudden need for privacy. It all clicked into place with a sickening finality. He wasn't a stressed executive. He was a predator living a double, maybe even triple life. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. I felt hollowed out, a fragile shell of the woman I was an hour ago. Every memory we'd shared was now tainted, every "I love you" a potential lie. The anniversary trip, the expensive tablet, were they guilt offerings? A way to placate the oblivious wife at home while he planned his next conquest? I scrolled numbly through the files, each one a fresh stab to the heart. There were hundreds of photos, dozens of short videos, a digital monument to his deception. Then I reached the bottom of the list and found a folder that wasn't named after a woman. It was simply labeled Assets. Curiosity, now a morbid, self-destructive force, compelled me to open it. It was filled with scanned documents, PDFs of bank statements for an account I didn't recognize, a property deed for a condo in a different state. My blood ran cold. This went far beyond cheating. This was a whole other life, with its own financial infrastructure. I scrolled through the file names, my mind struggling to process the scale of his deception. Then I saw a file that made my breath catch in my throat. Life insurance policy, update 2.0. We'd updated our policies together last year. I opened it, my eyes scanning the familiar legal jargon. I found the beneficiary section. My name was there, just as it should be. But there was an addendum, a rider, dated just 3 weeks ago. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read the clause. In the event of his death, 40% of the payout was now to be diverted to a trust. I scanned down, desperate to see the name of the trustee, of the beneficiary. It wasn't Melissa or Chloe or Jessica. It was a woman named Isabella Rossi. And beneath her name, in the notes section, Mark had typed a short, chilling sentence: "For our future." My mind reeled, trying to place the name, trying to understand. And then I saw the final file in the folder, a single scanned image. I tapped on it and the picture loaded. It was a positive pregnancy test held in a manicured hand. The file name was the final devastating blow. Baby Rossi, due February. Baby Rossi, due February. The words were a gut punch, knocking the last remaining breath from my lungs. I sank to my knees on the living room rug, the sleek, cold tablet slipping from my numb fingers and clattering onto the hardwood floor. The sound was unnervingly loud in the deafening silence of my shattered world. A baby. He wasn't just cheating on me with a string of different women. He was building a new life, a new family. While I was at home, tracking my ovulation, taking prenatal vitamins, and crying every month when my period arrived, he was creating a future with someone else. Isabella Rossi. Our future. His words from the insurance document echoed in my mind, mocking me. The U.S. he promised me was a lie. The real us was him and Isabella and their unborn child. A wave of nausea washed over me so powerful I thought I was going to be sick. The perfect house, the 10 years of memories, the man I loved. It all felt like a movie set, a facade built around a gaping, rotten sinkhole. He hadn't just been unfaithful, he had financially and emotionally entangled himself with another woman to the point of creating a child and securing their future with our money. The life insurance policy wasn't just an affair, it was a strategic move. He was reallocating our future, the one I had invested my entire adult life in, to her. The cold, calculated nature of it was what truly broke me. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was premeditated betrayal on a grand scale. For an hour, maybe 2, I didn't move. I just knelt on the floor, staring at the dust bunnies under the couch, my mind a blizzard of pain and rage. The shock slowly receded, replaced by an icy resolve that felt utterly foreign. The tears stopped. The shaking subsided. The woman who wanted to smash the tablet and pretend this never happened was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone cold and sharp and dangerously calm. He thought all his traces were deleted. He thought factory resetting that old phone was enough. He was arrogant. He was careless. And he had underestimated me. He had no idea he'd left the keys to his secret kingdom just sitting in our shared cloud, a digital time bomb waiting to explode. I picked up the tablet, my movements slow and deliberate. I couldn't confront him. Not yet. A screaming match would accomplish nothing. He would lie. He would gaslight me, call me crazy, maybe even try to twist it around and blame me. No, a direct confrontation was what he would expect. I needed a plan. I needed to understand the full scope of his deception before I made a single move. I began to work, a methodical fury guiding my fingers. I plugged the tablet into my laptop. I created a new, secure, password-protected folder on a separate hard drive. One by one, I downloaded every single file from that hidden vault, every video of Melissa, every photo of Chloe, every document in the assets folder, the bank statements, the property deed, the insurance policy, and the picture of that damning pregnancy test. I created a digital dossier of his betrayal, a comprehensive archive of the man he really was. As I worked, I felt a chilling transformation happening within me. The hurt was still there, a deep, cavernous ache in my chest, but it was being insulated by layers of cold, hard anger. He hadn't just broken my heart, he had put my entire future at risk. Our shared assets, our home, my financial security, it was all tangled up in his web of lies. This Isabella Rossi wasn't just the other woman, she was a threat, and her baby was the anchor that would tie Mark, and our finances, to her forever. I had to protect myself. After backing up everything, I meticulously deleted the backup of the iPhone 8 from our shared cloud account. I wiped the history, cleared the cache, left no digital footprints of what I had discovered. Then I performed a factory reset on the new tablet, wiping it clean, returning it to its out-of-the-box state. I placed it back in its beautiful silver box, retied the ribbon, and set it on the coffee table as if it had never been touched. The evidence was now mine, safely tucked away, and he was none the wiser. My mind was racing, formulating the next steps. I needed a lawyer, a very good, very ruthless divorce lawyer. I needed a private investigator to find out everything there was to know about Isabella Rossi. I needed to untangle our finances before he could siphon off anything else. That evening, when Mark came home, I played my part. I was the loving wife. I greeted him at the door with a kiss, my lips feeling like ice against his. I asked about his day, feigning interest as he spun some tale about a difficult client. He looked at me, his blue eyes full of what I now knew was counterfeit affection, and asked, "Hey, have you set up that new tablet yet? You're going to love it." I forced a smile, the muscles in my face protesting. "Not yet, honey. I was saving it. Thought maybe we could do it together this week." He smiled, a genuine, unsuspecting smile that made me want to scream. "Sounds great, babe," he said, wrapping his arms around me. I leaned into his embrace, the familiar scent of his cologne now smelling like deceit. As I stood there, wrapped in the arms of my betrayer, my mind was miles away plotting. I had the truth. I had the evidence. But it wasn't enough. Just divorcing him felt too easy, too clean. He had systematically dismantled my life for his own selfish pleasure. He deserved to feel a fraction of the pain he had caused me. He deserved to have his perfect, curated world come crashing down around him, just as mine had. I needed leverage, something more than just an affair, something that would give me control, something undeniable. And as I went back to the assets folder in my mind, replaying the list of documents, one file name suddenly clicked in my head. It was a scanned receipt for a storage unit, rented under his name, located on the industrial side of town. He'd never mentioned a storage unit. What could a man with so many secrets be hiding in a place like that? The storage unit receipt became my new obsession. It was a breadcrumb, a loose thread in the tapestry of his lies, and I knew I had to pull it. For the next few days, I was the model wife, a Stepford automaton going through the motions of our life. I made his favorite meals. I asked about his fictional high-stress project. I even initiated intimacy, a chilling act of performance art that left me feeling hollow and disgusted with myself. But every smile, every touch was a calculated move to keep him complacent, to keep his guard down. Inside, I was a coiled spring of vengeful energy, my mind working overtime, planning, strategizing. Finding the storage facility was easy. The address was right there on the receipt I had copied. Getting in was the hard part. I spent an afternoon parked across the street, watching the comings and goings. It was a standard facility. A keypad for entry, rows of identical roll-up metal doors, and security cameras perched everywhere. I wasn't going to get in without a key and a code. I went home that day feeling defeated, but not deterred. If I couldn't get in, I would have to find a way to make him lead me in. My opportunity came that Friday. Mark announced he had to go into the office for a few hours on Saturday morning to catch up on some paperwork. It was a classic, well-worn excuse. In the past, I would have accepted it without a second thought. Now I saw it for the flimsy lie it was. This was my chance. On Saturday morning, I woke up early, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I'd spent half the night online ordering what I needed. A tiny GPS tracker, no bigger than a quarter, with a magnetic base. It had arrived via rush delivery the day before. While he was in the shower, I crept out to the garage. His sleek black sedan sat gleaming under the dim light. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely peel the adhesive off the tracker. I found a spot deep inside the rear wheel, a place he would never see. I pressed it firmly into place, the magnet clicking satisfyingly against the metal. It was done. I went back inside and made coffee, my hands still trembling. When he came downstairs dressed in casual weekend clothes for his office trip, I kissed him goodbye. "Don't work too hard," I said, my voice saccharine sweet. He smiled, pecked me on the cheek, and said, "I'll be back by lunch. Love you." The words were like acid. "Love you too," I replied, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I was at my laptop, the tracking app open. A small blue dot representing my husband's car began to move across the map. It didn't head towards his downtown office building. It headed east, towards the industrial park. My breath hitched as the blue dot slowed, then stopped, blinking directly over the address of the storage facility. He was there. The rage and the validation that washed over me were so intense, they were almost dizzying. He was lying, right now, at this very moment. But I needed more than just confirmation. I needed to know what was behind that metal door. I gave him 20 minutes, then I got in my own car and drove. I parked a block away, my heart pounding, and walked towards the facility, my phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. I found a vantage point behind a large dumpster, my view partially obscured but good enough. And then I saw him. He was standing in front of Unit C-27, the roll-up door wide open. My stomach twisted into a knot. He wasn't alone. With him was a woman. From this distance, I couldn't see her face clearly, but she was pregnant, very pregnant. It had to be Isabella Rossi. She laughed at something he said, placing a hand on her swollen belly. The gesture was so casual, so intimate, it was like a physical blow. He reached out and touched her cheek, his expression tender. It was a look I had once believed was reserved only for me. I felt a primal scream building in my chest, and I had to bite my lip to keep it from escaping. This was his other life in flesh and blood, not just digital files on a tablet. This was real. I watched as they began to move things out of the storage unit and into the back of her SUV. It wasn't random junk. It was baby furniture, a beautiful unassembled wooden crib, a changing table, boxes labeled nursery decor and baby clothes. They were building a nest. Our money, our future, was being used to furnish a life I was explicitly excluded from. He was taking the dream we had shared, the dream of a child, and giving it to her. The pain was so sharp, so blinding, I almost missed it. Mark reached back into the dim corner of the storage unit and pulled out one last thing. It was a large, heavy-looking metal box, like a small safe. He handled it with care, placing it gently into the trunk of his own car. Isabella didn't seem to pay it any mind, busy arranging a box of diapers in her vehicle. What was in that box? It was clearly important. It was clearly something he kept separate from the baby supplies. He closed his trunk, locked the car, and then shared a long, deep kiss with Isabella before she got into her SUV and drove away. Mark lingered for a moment, then rolled down the door to C-27, locked it, and got into his car. I ducked down behind the dumpster as he drove past, my mind reeling. The baby furniture was a gut-wrenching discovery, but that metal box, that felt different. That felt like the real secret. That felt like the leverage I was looking for. Now I just had to figure out how to get my hands on it. The GPS tracker was still active. I could follow him, but where would he take it? He couldn't bring it home. And as I watched his blue dot move across the map on my phone, it didn't head back towards our house. It headed downtown, towards the one place he knew I would never, ever think to look for him. His office. His office. It was brilliantly simple. The one place his movements would seem completely legitimate. The perfect alibi woven into the fabric of his everyday life. He could stash that metal box there indefinitely, right under my nose. But his arrogance was, once again, his undoing. He assumed I was the same trusting, naive woman I had been for the last decade. He had no idea I was watching his every move on a satellite map, the blue dot of his car now stationary inside the parking garage of his corporate skyscraper. I didn't follow him immediately. I went home, my mind a maelstrom of calculated rage. The image of him with a pregnant Isabella, lovingly assembling their future while dismantling mine, was burned into my memory. That image would be my fuel. The plan formed with a chilling clarity. I knew Mark's office habits intimately. He always kept a spare key card to his office suite in the magnetic hide-a-key box under the fender of his car, a just-in-case measure he'd told me about years ago. It was a detail so small, so mundane, he would never imagine I'd remember it, let alone use it against him. I waited until late that night. Mark was home, playing the part of the devoted husband, watching a movie with me on the couch. He had his arm around me, his hand resting on my shoulder, and the sheer hypocrisy of his touch made my skin crawl. I feigned a headache, a classic excuse, and told him I was going to bed early. He kissed my forehead full of fake sympathy. "Feel better, babe," he said. Once in the bedroom, I listened until the sound from the TV downstairs told me he was engrossed in the film. I slipped on dark clothes, my heart a steady, cold drum against my ribs. I was no longer nervous. I was on a mission. I crept out to the garage, my fingers finding the cool metal of the hide-a-key box under the wheel well, right next to the GPS tracker I'd planted. The key card was there. Holding it felt like holding the key to his downfall. Driving his car into the city was a risk, but a necessary one. It would grant me access to the executive parking garage, no questions asked. The security guard at the garage entrance barely glanced at me, waving me through. I parked in Mark's designated spot and took the private elevator up to the 44th floor. The office was dark and silent, an eerie ghost of its bustling daytime self. The only light was the cold blue glow of the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I swiped the key card, and his office door clicked open. The air was thick with the scent of his cologne. I didn't waste any time. I knew where he'd hide it. Mark was a creature of habit. In his office, there was a large mahogany credenza behind his desk. He used it to store old files and liquor for schmoozing clients. But I also knew it had a false bottom in the deepest drawer, a secret he'd proudly shown me once after a few too many glasses of scotch, bragging about where he kept his irreplaceable things, rare cigars, a vintage watch. I found the drawer and felt along the back. My fingers found the small, almost invisible latch. The false bottom lifted, and there it was, the heavy metal box. It wasn't a safe, not exactly. It had a simple but sturdy lock. I hadn't come this far to be stopped by a lock. I'd brought a small toolkit from our garage. It took me 20 minutes of tense, frustrating work with a pry bar, the screech of metal on metal sounding like a cannon blast in the silent office. But finally, the lock gave way with a sharp crack. I lifted the lid, my breath held tight in my chest. What I saw inside had nothing to do with another woman or a secret baby. It was worse. So much worse. The box was filled with passports, all with Mark's picture, but with different names. There were stacks of cash in various currencies, and there were several USB drives. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just infidelity, this was something criminal. I took one of the USB drives and plugged it into his desktop computer. My hands were shaking again, but this time with a terrifying adrenaline. The drive was filled with spreadsheets, encrypted client lists, and offshore bank account information. Mark, my charming, successful husband, was an embezzler. The high-stress project wasn't a project, it was a multi-year scheme where he'd been systematically siphoning millions of dollars from his company's wealthiest clients, hiding the money in untraceable accounts. The documents detailed a plan to disappear, to start a new life with Isabella and the stolen money in a country with no extradition treaty. My name was nowhere. I was to be left behind, the clueless wife, to deal with the fallout, the debt, and the shame. In that moment, everything crystallized. A simple divorce was a gift he didn't deserve. He wasn't just going to lose his wife, he was going to lose everything. I worked quickly. I used his high-speed office scanner to copy the most incriminating documents from the box. I downloaded the entire contents of every USB drive onto my own encrypted hard drive. Then I put everything back. I put the passports and the cash in the box, snapped the broken lock back into a semblance of order, and placed it back in the false bottom of the credenza. I cleaned up any trace of my presence, took the spare key card, and left. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state. I met with her that afternoon and laid out the entire story, providing her with a copy of the hard drive. Her eyes widened as she saw the evidence, the affairs, the secret family, and the massive financial fraud. She assured me with a predatory grin that Mark wouldn't know what hit him. My second phone call was anonymous. From a burner phone, it was to the head of his company's internal audit department. I told him exactly where to look, what to look for, and gave him the number of the storage unit C27 as a little bonus. The fallout was spectacular. It was a Monday morning. I had already moved my most precious belongings to a friend's house. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, when Mark's world came crashing down. His phone started blowing up with frantic calls from his office. An hour later, 2 very grim-looking investigators from the FBI showed up at our front door. The look on Mark's face when he saw them, the utter shock, the dawning horror, the desperate searching glance he shot at me, was more satisfying than any screaming match could ever be. He saw nothing in my eyes but placid indifference. They took him away in handcuffs. The story exploded. It was all over the news, the high-flying executive, the multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme, the secret life. His assets were frozen. His reputation was incinerated. Isabella Rossi, I later learned from my lawyer, was left with nothing but an empty nursery and a mountain of her lover's debt. In the divorce settlement, I got everything. The house, the cars, his legitimate retirement accounts, everything his stolen money hadn't touched. I sold the house immediately, wanting to erase every last memory of the beautiful lie I had lived. I moved to the coast, to a small town not unlike the one where he'd given me the tablet that started it all. He thought he had erased all the traces of his betrayal, but he'd forgotten the one thing that never forgets. The cloud always remembers, And in the end, it wasn't his secrets that destroyed him. It was mine.